first encounter we've got is Taloc. Melon's got that pulled up. So the first phase just has a few fairly simple mechanics. Plasma Discharge is a debuff that's going to go out on 2 people. You have 3 seconds before you start dropping puddles. So as soon as the debuff goes out, you want to move where we're going to drop the puddles. And then if you have an immunity, like if you're watching that clip right there, the mage blinks or ice blocks and all. So we get the puddles, and basically if you've got an immunity, you can drop all the puddles at the same time. If you've got a big personal cooldown that doesn't drop the puddles, you can still try and stack them as much as you can to conserve space. So then the next ability that he's got up on the screen now is Sanguine Static. This is almost identical to the Wake of Flames off of Agrimar, where it's a 2-second cast, and he follows the person he has targeted, and then he sends out those 5 waves. If you get hit, you get knocked back and take a pretty good amount of damage. But the strat we're going to go with, everybody's going to stack behind the boss. The person, we're going to have a weak aura that will yell at you if you are being cast at with this. And so basically the idea is if this is cast on you, you want to turn the boss to the side away from the raid and get him to throw it at the wall or something like that.
Like where the red X is in that video?
Right. So that should basically negate that ability. Like as you can see, and that's pretty much the tuning that I saw. The people who are getting hit are getting chopped down to about half health, so we don't want the whole raid to get hit. But yeah, we'll have a weak aura ready if you're getting targeted with this. It will chunk you down to pretty low health. So to get it out, and then yeah. So the next thing is the boss will target the tank. It'll put that little beacon over the tank's head. And then after, I think it's a 6-second cast finishes, he will charge at the tank's location and slam his cudgel down on the ground. And the cudgel will absorb any of the pulls that are in that area. So essentially, we'll want to start dropping the pulls like in one area and then start working them around the wall. And then the tank will run to the first spot that there's a big group of the puddles, and he'll clear those up as we move around the room. We're not going to tank the boss in the center like that. It works pretty much like a lot of other abilities where it's distance based, sort of like the Soul Bomb on Argus, where if you're within so many yards, you take a whole lot of damage, but then it does decrease down to a lower amount if you're really far away. And then finally, after 20 seconds or some such, he will look at his cudgel and then run towards it and pick it back up. Anybody who's in the path of that will get knocked back. I think, yeah, here he goes here. He's running over to it. He's picking it up. I don't think anybody got hit there, but if you're in the path, you get knocked back and take a bunch of damage. So essentially, if we're all standing behind the boss as we go around the circle, and then the cudgel's on the opposite side of the room, that shouldn't really be an issue. Just be careful if you're having to run new puddles out that you don't run between him and his cudgel that's on the other side.
Yeah, you can see there's like a hunter and a demon hunter, I think, dropping the puddle right before he charges.
So that's pretty much the only mechanics in phase 1. He just goes through a series of those 4 mechanics. The boss, he wasn't for this testing. In the last testing, he started at 60% health, and then he goes to phase 2 at 35%. So yeah, that's pretty much the diagram of what we're wanting to do. We kind of keep going around the room as blood fills up behind us. If you get the puddles, just run behind the group a safe distance. drop them off, and then stack back up. Try to point the sanguine static at the wall, and then the tank will kite it to the opposite side of the room where will probably, I think there's like three times the debuffs go out in between each charge. So the first time he charges will probably be somewhere around where the empty circle is, and then have him charge over to the opposite side, blow that group up, and then we'll have that section of the room clean. It's fairly important that we keep the floor clean going into phase 2, because we're going to fill it up again with some of the mechanics from that phase. So phase 2. Melon catch up.
It's coming.
So yeah, once we hit 35%, he will walk to the center, put a big pull around him, and go. He's not immune, but 99% less damage. And then 2 types of ads are going to spawn. You can see them both right there in that clip. There's one ad that's just a blob that throws a line towards somebody that it's fixated on. When we intercept that ad, which is going to be the second tank's job, the ad explodes and knocks back anybody who's within 3 yards of it, I think. It's essentially like we're doing the orb soaks on Mythic Argus, except it's got a knockback added in. People with immunities, so like as you can see in that clip, the blobs are spawning on all different sides of the boss there and coming towards the group. So the tank's going to have to be running around trying to intercept those. If there's one heading towards the group and the tank is over on the left side intercepting one and it's over on the right, rogues, hunters, mages, whoever's got an immunity, a big cooldown, feel free to pop it and go intercept one of those. The other ad is the little Mist Pandaria Shaw looking thing. Yeah. That one is going to, like every 5 seconds or so, drop a puddle, kind of like we drop with the debuff under itself. So we're going to have to constantly be moving that ad around. So ideally what that tank would do in that clip is he would run it to the edge, like pull it over to the edge where the other tank death grips the ad to. He would pull it back to that corner, so you're starting there, and then like as it drops puddles, just kind of weave back and forth in the space so that we're using the less space possible with that ad. After, I want to say we get 3 ads, 3 of those tanked ads throughout that phase. So DPS pretty much need to just DPS those down. There's no reason to attack the little ones. The little ads, they can be death gripped in that clip. I'm not sure on the last testing if they could still be crowd controlled like that. It may be worth trying to knock them back or grip them once we get to the fight, especially if we do normal first, just to test some things out, and that may help out with surviving some of that. So basically, we just go down the elevator, and we've got a DPS down that one ad. It should be single target, just focus on that. But also, as we go down, we got to look over the side. And so, okay, the blobs knock you back. So if you're next to the edge and you get hit by one of those and they knock you back, you can get knocked off the edge and fall all the way to the bottom. If you're a class like a mage or a warrior or something like that, you can survive the landing, but most of us are going to be posed if we get knocked off. So the lasers are cutting across the room. As far as I've seen and heard from different streams and things, they're random every pull where they go across. So we just kind of have to peek over the edge and position ourselves to where we're not going to get cut by any of those. Because I'm pretty sure they're lethal if you get hit. outside of like an immunity or something like that. So yeah, that's basically all there is to phase 2. We just DPS down the ad, the second tank pops all the blobs, and we dodge the beams. Once we get down to the floor, the boss will go active again. He knocks back everybody once we land. And goes active. The ads don't go away, so we'll need to finish off any of the ads. And then phase 3 is exactly like phase 1, plus the blobs that fixate on people from phase 2. So yeah, pretty much phase 3 is we're going to go through and just do the same thing. Target the sanguine static away. If you've got a blob on you or a blob's coming in, the tank isn't nearby, then you'll have to intercept it. This is a video of kill that was done on test. They're spreading out in the room. If stacking behind the boss, I know on testing from streams that I saw, some guilds were doing the stack behind the boss tactic, and it was working. If there's something they've changed and it doesn't work once it's live, either there isn't a cast or we can't track it, then we will spread out like this. There he goes. He went to get the cudgel. Looked like he knocked the tank back when he went and got that. But yeah, I mean, they're at 47, 46. So that's how short phase 1 is. Or no, it's 35. So yeah, but still, they're halfway through phase 1. They've had one cudgel charge so far. So they're sanguine static.
Even then, it looks like those statics move slow enough that if it had one misplaced, like people could react to it.
Wieder die was ordentlich ablegen.
Yeah, here he goes. He's going to charge the tank again. Tank just runs off. Tank didn't react very quickly there, and the raid actually took a pretty big hit because they were fairly close.
That's where boost comes in.
Or yeah, I mean, it may be that's like the Windwalker. You'll still have Tiger Rush. Maybe you Tiger Rush the tank, and they can take off across the room faster. Especially Rack is going to be on his Death Knight. So yeah, the boss is transitioning to phase 2 here. Goes to the middle. They've got probably 3/4. Little between 2/3 and 3/4 of the room clear. So, but as they go through this phase here, it's going to slowly fill up. But yeah, so you can see the ad there. About every 5 seconds, it's dropping a new pull, and they're moving it around, and they kill it off here, and it's not long after this, the second one, there it is, the second one spawns. So you can't really, if we slack off or have too many people down, we're going to fall behind on these ads and have 2 of them dropping puddles as we go. Ideally, like he's going around the inner circle here, coming towards him. Ideally, probably weave it back and forth and fill in that whole side of the room. They just move the whole group. Which I guess in a pinch would work, but you know, ideally we fill that space as much as we can. You can see the floor coming up below them there, but you know they're slowly running out of room as the ads are dropping the pulls. So even though they went in with 3/4 of the room open, they're almost out of space. You can see somebody, well, looks like they rocket jumped back on. Somebody got knocked off there, but didn't fall off. So the boss, right before it lands, knocks everybody back, and then they go into the last phase. This is where we'll lust. and pretty much like they're using the same strat they did in phase one. We'll do the same thing if we're where we stack behind the boss. And yeah, so pretty much you drop all the puddles. The ads are going to be still going around. There isn't really a tank swap mechanic on this fight. I know from some, like I watched Sloot's testing, and he just tanked the boss the entire time, and the other tank did, the other job. I think the other tank, no, he tanked the ad in phase 2 also. Which, that's Sloot.
I think you
so it may
have to
just been
swap
that.
though, because of the charge. Because I think he picks the tank that is tanking him to charge. I believe that's how that works. So that's how Fat Boss explained it, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's the tank tanking him, but then he fixates on that tank and puts the beacon over his head, and the tank has to run away, and then he charges to him. But yeah, like from the stream, Sloot was doing it, and he would just, as soon as he got targeted with that, he would run out, it would charge him, and then he would have the boss again, just pull it back into position. For phase 1, you guys can swap, that way you can, use your cooldowns, however, and to make things more manageable. But there isn't like a swap debuff or anything like that. And then here in this last phase, one of the tanks has to be intercepting the ads. One thing about the blobs, I'm assuming they'll have fixed this for live, but I'm not sure if he runs into an ad here. But pretty much, it doesn't matter which direction the ad hits you. When they were testing this, you got knocked backwards when you hit an ad. So whichever direction you were facing, it knocked you backwards. So if you were facing towards the center of the room, and you hit an ad, it would knock you towards the center of the room. I'm assuming that's going to be fixed, but just be aware of that as we start progressing on this. That may still be the case.
Ja, was een stuk weer.
But yeah, it's fairly straightforward of an encounter, but there's still room for mistakes, definitely. The other thing is, ideally, we're hitting this fight on Mythic. On the first week Mythic is open. If I would like to have Heroic Farm cleared that first Tuesday of Mythic and start working on this fight. Essentially, it just adds 2 mechanics. Both of them happen in phase 1 and 3. 9 players are going to get a debuff that I believe was called Enlarged Heart. They changed the name a few times, so I'm not sure what it's called now. But essentially, it's an 8-yard circle around you, and it will deal, let's just say, 70k damage. So if you get hit by 2 of them, that's going to be 140k, which is probably going to be more health than any of us have at that point. So we all have to spread out. Yeah, here he's got it pulled up now. So puts a nice big circle everybody can see. So everybody, and it slows you as it ticks down. So the longer you've got the debuff, the slower you're going to move. So everybody has to react quickly. If you've got like a leap or a blink or something like that, you want to use that to your advantage to make sure we're all spread out and not clipping other people. The tank is going to get the other debuff, which is it's going to deal 800k damage, I think it is, split between everybody within 8 yards. So basically, if you don't have one of the Enlarged Heart debuffs, or I feel like I have that name wrong. Hardened Arteries. If you don't have one of the Hardened Arteries debuff, you need to stack with the tank. Basically, probably what we'll do is what they're doing in that clip, have the tank swap, and the tank with the debuff will run back to the melee camp. And then any ranged who don't get the debuff will want to come stack in and help split that damage. As you can see there, the Hardened Arteries debuff ends about 1.5 seconds before the tank's debuff goes off, so there's time for like people with blinks or something like that to get back into the group and help split that if they're quick about it. So yeah, The only other change is once we get to phase 3, instead of it being okay on Mythic in phase 1, there's 3 people who get the plasma discharge debuff. In phase 3, there's 5 people at a time who get it, so the room is going to really fill up with the blood pretty quickly. So we're going to have to be efficient, very efficient with our space, and make sure the tanks are clearing, as large of sections as possible. Yeah. Any questions on Taloc?
Would it make sense to kind of start out in like a mythic strat for normal and heroic when we go through it to be spread out, just so we're used to the spacing of the room? Or
from my understanding, like from testing I saw, he only does this like every 45 seconds to a minute or so. It's not like it's frequent that he does this. It's kind of, after every cudgel throw, he'll do this type thing, to where we could just handle all the other mechanics, and then when this is coming up on the timer, we just pre-spread, and then people who don't get it collapse back in for the tank debuff, and then once it's over, we just stack back up to make it easier on healing, and the sanguine static and things like that. If it ends up being that he's casting this like every 20 seconds and it doesn't make any sense to do that, then yeah, we'll probably just end up staying spread once we start doing it beyond that. But from the testing I saw, it's not incredibly often that he cast it.
gotcha.
Okay. So next up is going to be Mother.
Do you want the video or the GIFs first?
Just I'll pull up the GIFs and just read them out. Just
Okay.
pull up the video.
Cool.